So as I was writing this, it kind of turned into explaining all of Armament Haki, so I'll put a timestamp in the description below to mark where I start talking about Advanced Armament Haki. There will also be spoilers for anyone not caught up to the manga. Now let's jump in. Before we look at Advanced Armament Haki, I should go over regular Armament Haki and what I have interpreted from it, that way we'll be on the same page. In chapter 597, Whaley describes Armament Haki as an invisible suit of armor that can also be used as a weapon. Following the time skip, we see Luffy punching a pacifista of Haki as noted by Sentomaru. Later on, he uses Haki against the Kraken, except this time he calls out "Color of Arms, Hardening," and his fist becomes black. As of January 2021, we still do not know for sure if this hardening is a different level to Armament Haki or just a visual cue. In my opinion, it is the latter, and I will talk about the evidence supporting that towards the end. For now, let's treat this hardening as the lowest level of Haki. Based off the name of this technique and even its mistranslation as vulcanization, it would seem that it makes Luffy's skin several times harder and gives him the ability to touch Logia users. We know for sure that it gives him the ability to touch Logia users as it was stated and shown within the story. The hardening of the skin effect is supported by Doflamingo's breakdown of Gear 4 that is seen at the Dressrosa arc, and it also falls in line with the notion that Haki is supposed to be like armor. If we take this to be true, this will mean that strengthening your Haki will make you more and more immune to blunt, and even more important, piercing attack. This is indicated in the story as well by Luffy after Hody bites him. This would mean that the person with the stronger Haki is really just the person who can make their skin the hardest. We also know from Dressrosa and Luffy's Gale 4 that Haki is a power with a limit, meaning that you have a limited amount of Haki you can use, which is why techniques like Gale 4 have up until recently left Luffy without the ability to use Haki directly afterwards. This would also mean that techniques such as covering your whole body in Armament Haki will burn through your Haki much quicker. However, we don't know how this limit affects such a technique. For example, do you need to have/possess a certain amount of Haki to use it, or can anyone use it? But with the less Haki you have, the less solid the defense/offense from that Haki is? You know, like stretching a water balloon to hold more water. You can do it, but it becomes thinner and thinner until it eventually is unable to handle it and burst open. When teaching Luffy, Hergero says that he must let the Haki flow into his fist from parts of the body that do not need it. This statement would indicate that your body possesses Haki all throughout, even when you are only using it at one point. Now this is weird because then what does that mean when you run out of Haki? Does this all disappear, even if you only used it on your fist? Does using it on your fist only utilize the Haki that is possessed there? I would say that the answer to these questions is mixed. I think that the ability to use Haki is what is limited more so than your body's possession of it. So essentially there is a limit to how much and how many times you can utilize Haki within a certain period of time, after which you still possess Haki but you can't use it. I'd also say that when you utilize Haki on your fist, it is only utilizing the Haki possessed there unless you utilize the advanced technique that Hergero and the Admirals use. This thinking falls in line with the fact that all people possess Haki but very few people awaken to it, and even with Blackbeard commenting on Luffy's Haki and Jai despite Luffy having not awakened it at that point. If we apply this thinking to Virgo and full body Armament Haki, then we can finally answer our questions regarding this subject. It's essentially a technique that requires you to be able to utilize all of your Haki at once, meaning that if you're unable to utilize much Haki, you wouldn't be able to do it. It would also mean that utilizing this technique, even if you could barely do so, shouldn't make your Haki's defense any weaker. This introduction is getting a bit lengthy, so let's move on to the first time we encounter an advanced form of Armament Haki. During the fight, Katakuri used what Luffy referred to as armored defense. It's important to point out that Luffy is the only one who refers to this as such, not Katakuri. Katakuri calls this technique Edge Mochi and does state after activating it that there are levels to armament, inferring that this is of a higher level. I would like to challenge that, however. I do not think that this technique is utilizing a higher level of armament that anyone could potentially acquire. Up until this point, Katakuri's Haki wasn't shown as being significantly better than Luffy's, and later on in Gale 4, Luffy is able to break through Katakuri's armament and hurt him, despite his Haki not being any bit better than before. I think the explanation for these incidents is the same. Haki, when combined with the properties or abilities of a devil fruit, can artificially level up for lack of better words. To explain, let's pretend that skin hardened by Haki is like paper. Like imagine a big piece of paper, you could probably punch through it, right? What if there was a cement wall behind it though? You're not punching through it. It's the same thing with Katakuri's Edged Mochi. We know from Gale 4 that when you use Armament Haki, your skin is then resistant to change. It doesn't stretch, which is why Luffy's body and muscles compress in that form. Applying that knowledge here to Edged Mochi, Katakuri creates the shape of his arm into those blocky hands and then hardens it. Following that, he produces more mochi into his arms, compressing the mochi so that it's denser and harder. So then underneath his Haki covered skin is essentially a block of compressed mochi which would reinforce his armament and essentially give it the effect of being harder. For Gear 4 Luffy, underneath his Armament Haki is compressed air, which would essentially give a similar effect if not the same. And even if the offensive power of Luffy's Haki is a little bit below that of Katakuri's, the defense buff he gets from his skin being able to bend inward when attacked would probably cancel that out. I think that I've covered this pretty well, and so I'll move on to the next time we see what can be considered advanced Armament Haki. A quick note, I'll be referring to Ryo as Flowing Sakura because I have a speech impediment that makes it a bit hard for me to pronounce my R's correctly. With that being said, let's get right into it. Hiragura is the one who teaches Luffy about the ability to send Haki outside of your body to be used for attack and defense without making actual contact. Up to this point, we've seen Sentomaru, Rayleigh, and the Admirals use this form of Haki. To reiterate what I said before, Hiragura tells Luffy to let this Haki flow from the parts of his body that do not need it. This indicates that this advanced form of Haki is essentially just concentrating all of your Haki into one part of your body to the point that it flows outward and creates a barrier-like layer of Haki on the outside of your body, thus allowing you to attack and defend without contact. I like to point out that Hiragura equates Flowing Sakura to Haki, and when he first did so, he said a good katana will cut through steel when you want it to, and it will not break a sheet of paper if you do not wish it so. This statement is a direct callback to what the fanbase knows of as the breath of all things, an ability Zoro used to cut steel and defeat Mr. One in Alabasta. Some people have taken this statement as evidence that Zoro already has access to the second level of armament, however this statement doesn't actually provide support for that. Hiragura says this not in reference to that second level, but in reference to Armament Haki in general. The sentiment is reiterated in the following chapter as well, so the most we could take from that statement is that Zoro awakened his Armament Haki back in Alabasta. Finally, we've arrived at what I refer to as Level 3 Armament Haki, which is utilizing your Haki to penetrate the interior of an enemy and destroy them from the inside. As stated by Hiragura, this is the level beyond Level 2, so there is no doubting that they are different techniques. Now, as for how this technique really works, we don't have much evidence to say anything, but if I were to guess, I would say that it essentially builds upon what we already know. The first level of Armament Haki, called Hardening, is you utilizing the Haki possessed in a certain part of your body on that exact same part, essentially controlling the Haki within your body but not making it flow from one point to another. The second level builds upon that and is you controlling the Haki all throughout your body and being able to control where that Haki goes as well, thus allowing you to send it outside of your body by overloading a certain spot with it. The third level is the logical next step, and that's fully controlling your Haki to be able to send it into an object and still being capable of controlling its movement inside of that object. With that being said, that's about all that I can interpret from what we currently know. Now, as for the blackening of skin being a visual cue or a different level to Armament Haki, this is really not definitively said anywhere that I can find, but I believe that it is most likely a visual cue to indicate that this person is using Haki. After all, not everyone uses Haki, not even everyone in the New World. Despite this, I do believe that the blackening of one's skin is visible to others using Haki. This can all be supported by Luffy remembering Rayleigh destroying Cammy's collar, except during this flashback, Rayleigh's hand is black instead of, well, normal. This change essentially means that us not seeing a pre-time skip doesn't mean that it wasn't happening. Other support is the fact that Mofado characters like Charlotte Montdour's brothers can use it as well, which there isn't much of a reason for them being able to use it unless it is just the most basic form of Armament Haki. As for the people who can use Haki being able to see it, I based this off of law stating that Luffy was using too much Haki in Gear 4 despite only being able to see him, and Hiragura commenting on his appearance in Gear 4 resembling a deity, though this may be more because of the shape and steam rather than the Haki. Counter evidence to this would be the scene in which Luffy first shows off his elephant gun and Chopper comments that it didn't look like that before. However, this scene is anime only, and even so, Chopper may have only been referring to the change of shape that Luffy's Gear 3 underwent rather than a change of color. With all that being said, all of this is just my interpretation based off what I could find in the story, so if you disagree with anything or think you may have misunderstood something, please let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider liking and subscribing to be notified when I drop a new video. Until next time, this was OP Analysis, see ya.